Stop scrolling right now. What if I told you that the dirty, worn-out old pennies sitting forgotten in a dusty tin, a junk drawer, or an old grandmother's jewelry box could actually be worth serious money, and in some cases, we are talking thousands and thousands of Australian dollars? Today, we are going through 5 of the most important Australian Commonwealth pennies ever struck, and I promise you, by the end of this video, you will never look at an old penny the same way again. These are the dates every Australian coin collector, every weekend market hunter, and every person who has ever inherited an old coin collection absolutely needs to know. Stay with me, because this one is going to change everything. First up, coin number 5, 1936 Australian Commonwealth 1 penny. Let's kick things off with a coin that closes out one of the most fascinating decades in Australian numismatic history. The 1936 Australian Commonwealth 1 penny. Now, at first glance, if you pull one of these out of an old tin and it is dark, dirty, and heavily worn, your instinct might be to toss it aside. But please, do not do that, because even in that sad, neglected state, the 1936 penny is a coin with genuine collector demand and real market value behind it. First, let's talk about what you're actually holding. The 1936 penny was struck at the Perth Mint and the Melbourne Mint, and it carries the portrait of King George V on the obverse, the front of the coin. And the face value at the time of issue was simply 1 penny, which in today's decimal terms converts to less than 1 cent. So right away, you can see the extraordinary transformation this little copper disc has made, from a face value of effectively nothing in modern terms to something that collectors will genuinely compete over. Now let's talk real money. In poor to fair condition, and that is exactly what a dirty, worn example represents. A 1936 Australian penny in what graders would call good or very good condition typically trades in the range of 15 to 30 Australian dollars in everyday private sales. That sounds modest, but here is where it gets exciting. Move that same coin up into fine condition, where the main details are visible and the coin has lost most of its dirt through gentle cleaning or just natural wear, and you are now looking at values pushing $80 to $150 depending on the buyer. In very fine condition, expect $200 to $400. In extremely fine, that number jumps significantly, and in uncirculated grades, a 1936 penny can reach anywhere from $800 to well over 1,500 Australian dollars at specialist auction. But here is the part of the 1936 penny story that most casual collectors completely miss: the varieties and errors. There is a known dot variety associated with certain 1936 issues, and any 1936 penny showing a die crack, a doubled die, a misaligned strike, or any kind of mint error is automatically worth multiples of the standard catalog value. Error coins from this era, even in heavily worn condition, routinely fetch prices in the $2,000 to $5,000 range at specialist Australian coin auctions because the collector base for pre-decimal Australian copper errors is both passionate and willing to pay. If you look at your 1936 penny under a loupe and you notice anything unusual, a doubling in the lettering, an extra blob of copper, a die break running through the design, you may be holding something truly extraordinary. Always get unusual examples professionally assessed before selling. The 1936 penny also holds historical significance that adds to its appeal. This was the final full year of George V's reign before his death in January 1936, meaning coins bearing his portrait from this year carry a quiet historical weight that resonates with collectors interested in the story behind the metal. Australian numismatic history is deeply tied to the reign of the British monarchs whose portraits graced these coins, and the George V pennies occupy a particularly beloved spot in that story. At reputable Australian auction houses, and we are talking about the big names like Noble Numismatics, Downey's, and Monetarium, high-grade 1936 pennies regularly appear in their flagship sales and consistently attract competitive bidding. The combination of collector nostalgia, genuine scarcity in high grades, and the growing international interest in pre-decimal Australian coinage means the market for this coin has only strengthened over the past decade. Even your dirty, worn example represents the base of a pyramid whose peak reaches well into the thousands. Treat it with respect. Next up, coin number 4, 1927 Australian Commonwealth 1 penny. Moving back a decade, let's talk about the 1927 Australian Commonwealth 1 penny, and this is a coin that the numismatic community has an enormous amount of respect for, and for very good reason. The 1927 penny was struck exclusively at the Melbourne Mint, and it sits within a period of Australian coinage history that was marked by relatively modest mintage numbers, increasing collector sophistication, and a copper alloy composition that, while beautiful when fresh, tends to develop. That dark, almost chocolate brown patina that makes circulated examples look far less impressive than they really are. So if you have a 1927 penny sitting in front of you and it looks almost black, crusty, and neglected, understand that beneath that surface is a coin with a collector following that stretches from Brisbane to Perth and far beyond. Face value of the 1927 penny at time of issue was 1 penny, 1/240th of a pound in the old sterling system. Today, that translates to roughly half of 1 modern cent. The gap between that original purchasing power and today's numismatic value is staggering when you really think about it. In heavily worn, dirty condition, the kind that makes a non-collector want to throw it away, a 1927 penny is still comfortably worth 30 to 50 Australian dollars in a private sale to anyone who knows what they are looking at. That is already 60 to 100 times face value in modern terms. But the real conversation starts when you move up the grading scale. A 1927 penny in fine condition retains good detail and the monarch's portrait on the obverse is clearly defined, will bring 150 to 300 Australian dollars. In very fine, you are looking at $400 to $700. And here is where the numbers become genuinely exciting. In extremely fine condition, expect to see prices between $1,000 and $2,000 depending on the surface quality and the eye appeal of the specific example. Mint state examples of the 1927 penny, those that never entered circulation and retained their original mint luster, are rare enough that when they appear at auction, they routinely command prices between $3,000 and $6,000 Australian dollars, with exceptional examples pushing beyond that figure. Now, the variety and error picture for the 1927 penny adds another whole dimension to its value story. There are documented die varieties in the 1927 issue, and any example showing a repunched date where you can see a ghost image of the date numerals beneath the main strike is a significant premium piece. Similarly, any 1927 penny showing a filled die error, a double strike, a broad strike, or any kind of planche flaw is immediately a candidate for specialist auction rather than a local coin fair. These error examples in even moderate circulated condition can realistically achieve $2,000 to $8,000 when presented to the right audience of specialist collectors. The 1927 penny was struck in a year that carries its own historical resonance for Australians. It was the year Parliament House opened in Canberra, marking a monumental moment in the nation's development and the formal establishment of the national capital. Coins struck in years of national significance always carry an additional layer of collector appeal, and the 1927 penny benefits enormously from this connection. Australian collectors who focus on the intersection of numismatic rarity and historical narrative are particularly drawn to this date, and that passion translates directly into auction room competition and strong realized prices. The Melbourne Mint workmanship of this period was exceptional, and even heavily worn examples tend to show crisp, well-centered strikes when examined carefully beneath the grime. If you have a 1927 penny that feels well-struck and well-centered even in poor condition, there is every chance that professional conservation, not cleaning, but proper archival conservation, could reveal a coin of considerably higher grade than its current appearance suggests. This is a coin worth taking seriously. Next up, coin number 3, 1923 Australian Commonwealth 1 penny. Now we are getting into truly serious territory. The 1923 Australian Commonwealth 1 penny is not just an interesting coin, it is one of the key dates in the entire pre-decimal Australian copper series, and if you have one sitting in your collection right now, even in the dirtiest, most worn condition imaginable, you are holding something that the Australian numismatic community treats with genuine reverence. Here is the context you need to understand why the 1923 penny commands the kind of respect and value that it does. The mintage for the 1923 penny was relatively low compared to many other years in the series, and crucially, enormous numbers of early Australian pennies were melted down over the decades as copper prices fluctuated and pre-decimal coins were demonetized following the introduction of decimal currency in 1966. The coins that survived, particularly in any grade above heavily worn, did so essentially by accident, tucked away in jars, forgotten in estate collections, or preserved by collectors who recognized their significance early. Face value in 1923 was 1 penny. In the context of Australian wages of that era, a penny had genuine purchasing power. You could buy a small bread roll or a newspaper. Today, that face value means nothing in monetary terms. But its numismatic value means everything. In the kind of dirty, poor condition we are discussing today, coins that have been in circulation for decades, possibly used in tobacco tins, handled by working hands in foundries and farms across Australia, a 1923 penny is still conservatively worth 100 to 250 Australian dollars in a private transaction with an informed buyer. That is not a typo. Even the worst surviving examples of this date carry that kind of floor value because collectors know how genuinely difficult it is to find any example at all. In good condition, think $200 to $400. In very good, $400 to $700. In fine condition, the 1923 penny is comfortably a $1,000 coin. In very fine, you are looking at $2,000 to $4,000. In extremely fine, prices of $5,000 to $10,000 are absolutely realistic and have been achieved at major Australian auctions. Mint state examples are so rare that when they appear, and they do appear occasionally in major estate sales, they can realize anywhere from $15,000 to well beyond $30,000 Australian dollars, depending on the quality of the surfaces and the strength of the strike. The error and variety dimension of the 1923 penny takes an already exciting story and makes it extraordinary. Any 1923 penny showing a die crack, a cud break, a misaligned reverse, a broad strike, or any form of double die error is immediately a premium item that should go nowhere near a casual buyer until it has been professionally assessed. The combination of a key date with a significant mint error is the kind of thing that makes specialist collectors genuinely emotional, and prices in those circumstances can be completely unpredictable in the most wonderful sense. We are talking about potential values that can reach $10,000, $20,000, or in exceptional cases far beyond that when the error is dramatic and the coin is correctly identified and presented. The 1923 penny was struck during a period when Australia was still finding its economic feet following the devastation of the First World War. And the modest mintage reflects the economic realities of that era. There is a story in every 1923 penny. A story of a young nation, of difficult times, of copper that was too valuable to waste on excessive coin production. That narrative, combined with the genuine scarcity that resulted, makes the 1923 penny one of the coins that every serious Australian numismatist dreams of finding in a deceased estate or at the bottom of an old biscuit tin. If you have one, treat it accordingly. Next up, coin number 2. 1917 Australian Commonwealth 1 penny. We are now at number 2, and the 1917 Australian Commonwealth 1 penny deserves every bit of the spotlight that numismatists have directed at it over the years. This is a coin with a wartime story, a scarcity story, and a value story that all combine to make it one of the most sought-after pennies in the entire Australian series. 1917 was, of course, the third year of Australia's involvement in the First World War. A war that was reshaping the nation's identity, economy, and population in ways that cannot be overstated. Metal was precious. Resources were directed toward the war effort. Coin production was not a priority in the way it might have been during peacetime, and the mintage figures for the 1917 penny reflect those pressures. The coins that were struck for everyday commerce, for the working men and women who kept Australia functioning while so many of their peers were overseas, and they entered circulation immediately and thoroughly. Finding a 1917 penny in anything above well-worn condition is a genuine achievement. The face value was 1 penny. The modern decimal equivalent is less than 1 cent. The current market value is incomparably greater. Let's talk about what your dirty, worn 1917 penny is actually worth. In truly poor condition, barely identifiable, flat wear across the surfaces, possibly with some environmental damage from years of being buried or sitting in moisture, a 1917 penny still commands between 150 and 300 Australian dollars from a knowledgeable buyer. The floor value for this date is genuinely that strong, because the collector demand consistently outpaces supply. Move up to good condition, and you are looking at $300 to $500. Very good brings $500 to $800. Fine condition pushes this coin into the $1,000 to $2,000 range. Very fine is $2,500 to $4,500, and extremely fine examples have achieved prices between $6,000 and $12,000 at major Australian numismatic auctions. Uncirculated examples of the 1917 penny are extremely rare, and when they do appear, they tend to attract the kind of bidding competition that results in prices of $20,000 and beyond. The variety and error picture for the 1917 penny is particularly rich. There are recognized varieties in the 1917 issue relating to different reverse die combinations, and collectors who specialize in die varieties within the pre-decimal series treat these distinctions with enormous seriousness. An identified variety example of the 1917 penny in any grade above fine is a coin that belongs at specialist auction, not a local coin swap meet. Additionally, any 1917 penny showing a significant mint error, and given the wartime production pressures, error coins from this era do exist and are found, can multiply the standard catalog value many times over. Error examples with dramatic visual impact have sold for prices that well exceed the standard value multiples you might expect, precisely because they combine rarity, historical period, and collector desirability in one package. There is something deeply moving about holding a 1917 Australian penny. Think about whose hands it passed through. The men who went to Gallipoli and the Western Front and came back, or didn't come back, had pennies just like this one in their pockets. The women who worked in factories and farms and households across Australia while their brothers and husbands were overseas used pennies just like this one every single day. The wartime context adds an emotional dimension to this coin that no amount of catalog value can fully capture, and it is part of why Australian collectors hold the 1917 penny in such high regard. When you add genuine numismatic scarcity to that emotional resonance, the result is a coin that will always find passionate buyers at serious prices. Next up, coin number 1, 1912 Australian Commonwealth 1 penny. And here we are. Number 1. The coin that sits at the very heart of this video, the 1912 Australian Commonwealth 1 penny. And I want you to understand right now, before we go a single word further, that if you have a 1912 penny anywhere in your possession, even if it is the most battered, blackened, corroded example you have ever seen, you are holding something that is truly special in the world of Australian. Numismatics. The 1912 penny was struck at the London Mint. The King's Norton Mint and Heaton's Mint in Birmingham also contributed to Australian penny production in this early Commonwealth period, and it represents one of the earliest dates in the entire Australian Commonwealth penny series, which began in 1911. The coins of this very early period are foundational to the series, and the 1912 penny in particular has developed a collector following that spans generations. These coins are over 100 years old. They have survived 2 world wars, the Great Depression, decimalization, and decades of being overlooked in shoeboxes and biscuit tins across the country. Every surviving example, no matter how worn, is a minor miracle of preservation. Face value at issue: 1 penny. The purchasing power of 1 penny in 1912 Australia was meaningful. A penny could buy a small item at a general store, could pay for a newspaper, represented real value in the daily economy of a young Commonwealth nation that was only 11 years old at the time of this coin's striking. Today, that face value is ceremonial. The numismatic value is a completely different story. In the worst possible condition, corroded, encrusted, barely legible, a A 1912 Australian penny still has a base value of approximately 200 to 400 Australian dollars in a private sale to a buyer who knows the series. That floor exists because the collector demand for this date never disappears. There are always more collectors wanting 1912 pennies than there are coins available, and that supply-demand imbalance supports value at every grade level. In good condition, expect $400 to $700. In very good, $700 to $1,200. Fine condition brings $1,500 to $2,500 for a well-struck original surface example. Very fine is $3,000 to $5,000. Extremely fine pushes between $6,000 and $12,000 depending on the quality of the surfaces and the vibrancy of any remaining luster. And uncirculated examples, those extraordinarily rare coins that survived a century without ever going into the pocket of a working Australian, have realized prices at major auction that have exceeded $25,000, $30,000, and in the most remarkable cases, figures that approach and exceed 50,000 Australian dollars when the coin presents exceptionally and bidding competition is fierce. The variety and error picture for the 1912 penny adds yet another dimension to an already extraordinary value story. The very early Commonwealth pennies were struck using dies that were sometimes reused, repunched, or that developed notable die cracks and breaks during use. Any 1912 penny showing a clear die crack, a repunched date, a doubled obverse or reverse, a filled die variety, or any kind of mechanical doubling or error strike is a coin that belongs at the absolute top of the specialist market. We are talking about values that can reach 10,000, 20,000, or in the most extreme cases of a dramatic, clearly attributed error on a key early date, values that numismatic specialists would not even try to place a ceiling on without seeing the coin in hand. If you have a 1912 penny and something looks unusual about it, a ghost date, a strange doubling in the lettering, an extra mark that seems intentional rather than damage, do not sell it to the first person who makes you an offer. Get it professionally assessed. Get it certified. Understand what you have before you make any decision. There is also the matter of the London Mint versus the Australian Mint strikes of certain early pennies, and attribution of mint of origin on early Commonwealth copper can have significant value implications. Specialist catalog research combined with professional opinion is absolutely worthwhile for any 1912 penny in above-average condition. The early Commonwealth copper series is one where attribution expertise pays for itself many times over. The 1912 Australian Commonwealth penny is not just a coin. It is a piece of the foundation of modern Australia, struck when the Commonwealth was barely a decade old, circulated through the hands of people who were building this nation from the ground up, and surviving into the 21st century as a tangible connection to the earliest years of Australian nationhood. That story, combined with its genuine numismatic rarity in any grade above poor, makes it the absolute standout in today's video and, I would argue, one of the standout coins in the entire pre-decimal Australian series. Final thoughts. So there you have it. 5 Australian Commonwealth pennies that prove beyond any doubt that the old saying about not judging a book by its cover applies just as powerfully to coins as it does to anything else in life. 5 dates. 5 stories. 5 coins that started life with a face value of 1 penny and have grown into pieces of genuine numismatic significance worth hundreds, thousands, and in exceptional cases, tens of thousands of Australian dollars. The lesson from today is simple but important. Before you sell an old coin, before you give one away, before you let anyone talk you into a quick and easy price without doing your research, take a moment to understand what you actually have. The Australian pre-decimal copper series is a field where knowledge pays dividends, where a $50 coin and a $5,000 coin can look almost identical to the untrained eye, and where the difference between the two is simply the date stamped on the metal and the grade of preservation. If you have any of these 5 pennies, the 1912, the 1917, the 1923, the 1927, or the 1936, in your collection, I encourage you to get them looked at by a professional Australian numismatist. Have them graded, have them attributed, and understand their true place in the market before making any decisions. You might be sitting on something far more valuable than you ever imagined. And if you found this video useful, if it has opened your eyes to the extraordinary world that exists inside those old, dirty, forgotten copper coins, then please do one thing for me right now. Hit that subscribe button. Every week we go deep into Australian and world numismatics, uncovering the stories and the values behind coins that most people walk straight past. This community is growing, it is passionate, and it is full of people just like you who want to understand what they have and what it is truly worth. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and happy collecting.